We bought the Taproot filly out of Tisn't She Beautiful and will be trained by Todd Fletcher. Extremely athletic, a lot like him. We're excited to see him on the track.
Beautiful filly. She's out of a graded stakes mare that ran early as a 2-year-old, so I like that quite a bit out of her. This filly looks like she's going to be super early and precocious. Very good muscled filly, just a lot to like about her.
Taproot, standing at Gainesway.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the TimeformUS Road to the Derby series presented by Gainesway, as Gainesway is presenting all of our Kentucky Derby prep coverage at the Daily Racing Form this season. The focus of this video is one of 3 preps taking place around the country on Saturday at Aqueduct. It is the Grade 2 Wood Memorial, race 8 on their 11 race card. This is going 9 furlongs for the 3-year-olds, 100 Kentucky Derby qualifying points on the line to the winner of this race. So whoever wins, and likely whoever finishes second, will be in the starting gate on Kentucky Derby Day on the first Saturday in May. Got a field of 8 signed on for this Wood Memorial. Let's throw up the field for this race, and I think we've got 3 horses that are likely to garner most of the tote action in this race. They are the number 1, 3, and 5, Mo Donegal, early voting, and the horse that I pegged as the slight morning line favorite, the number 5, Morello, coming off that local prep victory in the Gotham. But actually, all of those 3 horses are stakes winners at Aqueduct, early voting, having won the Withers, and Mo Donegal last year having won the Grade 2 Remsen, going the same 9 furlong distance. So each one of these has the credentials to be the Wood Memorial winner, but it's going to be interesting to see how those 3 stack up against each other, having never raced against each other before. But it's not just about those 3. There are some others with speed figures, with some credentials to make some noise in this race. The New York bred on the outside, Bereze, is undefeated coming in. We'll get to him a little bit later in this video. But before we get into the major contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this race. There is a fast pace predicted, mostly due to the presence of that number 3 early voting, who set a very fast pace when he won the Withers last time out. So if he's ridden as aggressively in this race, he could lay down some enterprising fractions once again. Perhaps that's going to set it up for a closer like the number 1, Mo Donegal. Horse who should not be that bothered by the pace is the number 5, Morello. He's just a very handy type who's able to stalk. He can be forwardly placed, but does not need to be right on the lead. So he should be sitting off that number 3 early voting in the early stages. We'll see how much that one decides to open up on the lead in the early stages of this race. And also what those 2 Todd Fletcher runners do, the number 2 Golden Code and the number 4 Long Term, both of whom have some tactical speed and could apply some pressure if they're ridden that way to the number 3 early voting in the beginning stages of this race. Let's go through the major contenders in this race, and we'll do them generally in morning line order, beginning with the favorite at 8-5, the one that I pegged as the morning line favorite, the number 5, Morello, and we'll take a look at his last out victory in the Grade 3 Gotham Stakes, the local prep for this race. This was going the 1-turn mile distance, and Morello was a pretty impressive winner of this race. He comes into the top of the stretch, really just under a hand ride by Jose Lezcano, not asked for his best until he straightens away into the stretch. And you can see once Jose shakes the reins at this horse, he's going to put away his company to the inside and draw up to a pretty impressive victory. He's really only sat down for about a 16th of a mile, and then Jose kind of realizes he's got the race won, eases up on him for the final 16th, and he just coasts into the wire. A very impressive winner of this race, and really all 3 of Morello's victories have looked very similar to this. He has not been asked for his best in 3 victories, and he's won them all by open lengths. An easy winner of his maiden race, despite breaking slowly that day, stepped it up from a speed figure standpoint in the Jimmy Wingfield in his next start, and did the same thing last time in the Gotham, stretching out by 1 furlong each time from the 6 to the 7 to the mile, and now he's going to go another extra furlong once again to go the 1.125 distance. We'll see if he handles it. Personally, watching this horse, I do get the sense that he might be more of a 1-turn mile type, but he's got that versatility and that ease of running style where he can be so tactical that I'm not going to be surprised if he's able to handle the 1.125 distance of this Wood Memorial, especially given the trip that he's likely to pull. I'm not against Morello. I just think that of the 3 major contenders, he arguably has the most to prove stretching out in distance. 2 horses that have already handled the distance are early voting and Mo Donegal. Let's take a look at the first of those when he won the Withers back in early February at Aqueduct. That is early voting, coming into the stretch with a sizable lead on this field. He was very aggressively ridden coming out of the starting gate to immediately open up an advantage on this field, and he laid down some pretty fast fractions into the clubhouse turn, down the backstretch, and he really held a sizable advantage for the entirety of this race. You can see him getting a little bit green and leg weary through the stretch. He briefly drifted down towards the rail, which was not the place to be on this February 5th card at Aqueduct, but Jose Ortiz got him straightened out, and he was able to get back into the 3-4 path for the run through the final eighth of mile and was able to hold off the closers in that race. That Withers was somewhat flattered by run backs out of that race. Obviously, the runner-up Unoho came back to win at Oaklawn Park, graded stakes in his next start, so that flattered the form of the Withers. Also, the fourth place finisher Grantham came back to finish a good second in the Tampa Bay Derby in his next start. So that was definitely a stronger race than maybe some people initially gave it credit for at the time. And what I was talking about with those fast fractions of the Withers, you can see in those TimeformUS pace ratings, pairing up 149 pace ratings for the first two calls of that Withers. That's a really fast pace going the mile and eighth distance on the dirt. So early voting definitely has the speed and the stamina to get this distance. It's something we saw out of him last time to keep going after setting those fast fractions. Definitely a horse that can get the mile and eighth. We'll just see if he's able to do it against a tougher field in the Wood Memorial on Saturday. The other horse that has already handled this distance at Aqueduct is Mo Donegal. We'll take a look at him winning the Remsen Stakes to close out his 2-year-old campaign back in December of last year. That is Mo Donegal switching to the outside in those green and yellow Donegal Racing silks. He's going to make a quick burst to take over this race about an eighth of a mile from the finish line. He's going to strike the front here. And the horse, too, is inside Zandon. That's a pretty good runner in his own right. And he's going to battle Mo Donegal all the way down to the wire. Mo Donegal just able to fend off that foe to win by a nose here. Things do get pretty tight coming onto the wire. Mo Donegal kind of shifted ground to make things very tight on that rival in the closing strides, but he was left up by the stewards and was the winner that day. He's made one start since then when he made his 3-year-old debut in the Holy Bull down at Gulfstream Park and just didn't really get the right trip that day, kind of lost interest around the far turn when the race got away from him a little bit. That short stretch configuration going a mile and the 16th at Gulfstream Park, just not really the ideal configuration for Mo Donegal, a horse that really wants to make up most of his ground and hit his best stride on the straightaway. So he's going to get to do that as he moves back over to Aqueduct, going this demanding mile and eighth distance. I really think it's going to play into his stamina. So I do believe this is the right race for Mo Donegal. He just has to take that step forward from a speed figure standpoint and prove that win in the Remsen was no fluke, because we've seen some horses coming out of the Remsen over the past several years not always achieve the heights that they were thought to as 3-year-olds, but Mo Donegal does seem like one that will be well suited to getting back to Aqueduct. And also, he would like it if early voting sets a fast pace on the front end in this Wood Memorial. But there are a couple other horses that I do want to consider in this race. One of those is the number 8 Berese. Let's take a look at his victory against New York breds last year, out going the 1 mile in the Gander Stakes. Now, that is him coming into the stretch in second place, and it looks like he has no chance to win this race when they head into the lane, because the winner was, or I should say the leader, was 4-5 on this day, Bold Journey, and looked like he was on his way to his easy victory. But I like the way that Berese never gives up. He's under pretty stiff pressure by Dylan Davis through the final eighth of a mile in this race, and he really responds, hitting his best stride in the final eighth to just nail that early leader and heavy favorite on the wire to win this race, going away by a length and a half. Now, Berese, kind of like Morello, does have to try 2 turns for the first time and stretch out to the mile and eighth distance. Now, he's been beating slightly weaker company. He also hasn't run quite as fast as Morello, so I'm not quite as confident that he's going to be able to handle the stretch out and distance against tougher horses, but I do think he's a likable runner. He really finishes off his races strongly, and he's a horse that I would have liked quite a bit if he was running in the Bayshore going 7 furlongs a bit later on this Aqueduct card. I just wonder if his Wood Memorial is going to be a bit too tough of an assignment for him in his 4th career start. One more horse that I do want to mention before we wrap up this analysis is the number 4 Long Term, one of Todd Pletcher's other runners in this race. He is still a maiden after 4 career starts. He has finished second in all 4 trips over in the afternoon, and he's really been short prices in more than a few of those races and probably should have gotten his diploma by now. But I do think he ran pretty well in defeat last time behind a well-meant Chad Brown runner electability. He got a 1:08 TimeformUS speed figure for that second place finish, going the 1 turn mile last time. That was on the same day they ran the to Gotham, and that mile race that he ran against maidens did not come up that much slower than the Gotham. So I think that based on that recent speed figure, he's a potential contender in this race. Just has to prove that he's able to step up against much tougher foes, because that jump from maidens into grade 2 company is a real step up in class, though he does seem like the kind of horse that might relish the mile and 1/8 distance. So I do want to view him as an exotics player, just not really thinking that he's a win candidate in this Wood Memorial on Saturday. Let's throw my picks for this race, and I'm going to give the slight edge to the number 3 early voting. I was really impressed with the way this horse won the Withers back in February. He's got to prove that race was no fluke and do it against much tougher company here, but I think they're going to employ the same tactics, riding him aggressively, and given the stamina that he showed last time, I'm hopeful that he can fend off that challenge that's likely to come from Morello in upper stretch and also from Mo Donegal in the late stages of this race. I do have Mo Donegal in second. I believe he's going to take a step forward out of that seasonal debut in the Holy Bull, so he's my second pick in this race, and I am not really against Morello. I have him third. I just feel like if he's the favorite in this race, I prefer the other two at what could be slightly better prices. So that's a look at the Wood Memorial on Saturday at Aqueduct. Thanks to Gainesway for presenting this video, and good luck to you for playing the races this weekend.